So I just committed 50 grand to a brand new business mentor, and I'll probably make a video a couple months from now on an update on how it's going and everything and what I'm learning. And the very first meeting that we had, I hopped on the call and a little bit of small talk, and then he went right into it. I mean, he's the kind of a guy who just gets right down to business, right? And he asked me a really interesting question, and it has had me reflecting a lot, because in the past couple of weeks, this pattern has come up, and I think it's a pattern that God is putting on my heart, and that's why I want to make a video about it and share it with you guys. And he asked me the question, he said, Trey, why are your goals so small? And I laughed. I genuinely, like, it took me back, because it's like, I guess they are kind of small for your group. Like, the people in your group, they're doing these huge numbers. And I love being in this group. I mean, it's so inspiring being in here, and I haven't been a part of something like this since Sam Levin's, like, Quantum Mastermind back in the day. That's the 36 grand mastermind. I was in it for 2 years long. Learned a lot from him, and it helped me, get my first multiple six-figure months. I mean, I learned a lot in these mastermind environments. I'm just kind of like a sponge, just as anybody else would be. And I haven't made an investment like that in a while, so figured it was time. But anyway, that's off track. He asked me that question, and my answer was essentially, look, I don't have any desire to go beyond a level where I perceive myself as needing to make sacrifices that I'm no longer willing to make. And what was really cool is I felt in that moment my old wiring almost like be like, oh, like there's like this like almost ego attack of like, why am I thinking so small? Why am I not thinking bigger? And don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with thinking big in business. I have literal clients of mine that have gone on to have $1 million months. Okay, I have multiple clients that do $500,000 a month in our current Kaizen Mastermind group, like right now. And so I think these numbers are great. But the reason I was able to answer that way, and the reason I said that, was because 2020 to 2022, maybe 2023, what I didn't realize I was doing was I was just making up for trauma. Like, I was literally just chasing a version of myself to feel a certain way about myself, and I wasn't growing from the right place. Now, here's the problem with the internet, is I'm going to say this, and you guys are going to translate me as saying growing your business is bad. Like, people think in these extreme binaries. It's either you want to make a bunch of money or you don't. It's not. It's way more nuanced than that. I want to make a bunch of money. I want to do very, very well. But I want to build from a place of not chasing a version of myself and trying to fill a gap that I feel in my life, but building from a place of knowing exactly who I am, primarily for me in my faith, and having a sturdy walk in life outside of business, and building from a place of the business just reflects the person that I've become. So if you go back to 2017, this is honestly the last time in my life, up until very recently, I'm talking the past 6 months, that I've felt peace and joy. And 2017, I was dating a girl that I genuinely was in love with. Like, 100% was totally in love with, and we've reconciled, and she's married now, I'm married, we're both very happy. Like, I don't think about her in any way. I'm very happy. But at that time, my body has an association with that season. And it was right around the same time, for those of you who followed me for a while, you know that our family went through a house fire, and that house fire really shook up my life. And that was right on when we broke up on pretty bad terms. And pretty bad is probably an understatement. I mean, it was really bad. Like, my heart got ripped out of my chest. We had this conversation in the car. And by the way, if you remember being 17, you remember how the whole world just had so much feel to it. Everything just hit you like a brick, right? At least it did for me. Like, I was a very feely guy, like, and what my body learned was, like, if I give somebody or something all of my heart, like, I'm just gonna get hurt. And I also learned in that moment from that just intent. I remember driving 2 hours north to her college that she went to, that I was trying to convince her not to go to, and I don't think she made the wrong decision. I don't think I made the wrong decision. That's neither here nor there. At the time, though, that was a huge point of contention, and it festered in me this resentment of, like, I want to prove it to her, prove it to her family, prove it to me, even my family. Like, there was this, like, ego drive that was just frustrated at the fact that the woman that I was in love with had so much doubt in me. And it wasn't her fault. Like, that's how she grew up. Like, that was the route you go. Like, I was a moron for thinking otherwise, and I don't blame her or hold it over. But at the time, you could see how that would hurt so much. And it just fractured me. I remember driving home from this breakup, and I was in tears. I mean, I cried for a whole 2 hours in the car on the way home, because she told me, you're not a man. Like, you're not doing what men do. She said some things in that car, that breakup, and I'd entrusted her with so much of my heart, and it just ripped me to shreds. And it was like my villain arc, you know? And so I was like, and I just turned 18 right after we broke up, and my family had just gone through this house fire. So I'd lost everything. At the time, I was a wedding photographer. I'd lost my gear. I couldn't shoot weddings, so I had to refund like 10, 15 grand worth of weddings. The woman I thought of my dreams had just, I had my heart broken, and it was my fault entirely. I was being an idiot, you know, and like, whatever. And what's cool is I've confided all this in my wife, and she's amazing about all this. She gets where I'm coming from. It's not like, again, there's nothing going on that's unhealthy in my marriage. Just FYI, we're very in love. But my body is still fractured from this time. So let's fast forward a couple years, 2018 to 2022, 2023-ish, right around when I'm getting married, and a lot of things are changing in my life, and I'm expecting my first kid all of a sudden and everything. That season, I never slowed down to consider where I was building from and why. And only recently have I been attracting clients that pay outright, no questions asked, making a ton of money, serving them. It's easy, it's very fun for me, they're getting great results. And finally, I'm just like, you know, like I can take a effing breath for the first time. And guess where my body goes? Over the past month or two, my body has gone right back to those memories, right back to that time, right back to thinking about that time of my life and the pains that I'd incurred and the work that I haven't done. Because instead of sitting in that pain and instead of mourning the loss that I'd incurred, I coped with success, and I coped by feeling a certain way about myself. The second I made some money, got a nice apartment. I spent $4.5 grand a month on this like penthouse apartment. I bought Rolexes, I bought cars. I literally in my head visualized myself, and this was like on my like internal vision board, buying a nice car, like a wicked nice car in cash, and just driving it by her place. Like that's where I was in my head at like 20, and I hadn't healed from this. Well, not at 20, like at like 18, 19. I was just about to turn 20 when I met my now wife. And I can honestly say that even when I first met my wife, it's a total act of the Lord and His grace over my life, that even when I met my wife, she was even just something to fill this void that I'd experienced. Because ages 13 to 17, I was an extremely, like if you knew me at that time, and some of the viewers of this channel would, it's like, I just gave everything my all. I ran this men's group out of our home, and that grew to be like 30, 40 guys some weeks, just like spontaneously. And I learned guitar and photography, and I just gave everything my all. I just went all in on things, and I put my heart into everything. And the first time my heart experienced this reality that like I could put my heart into something, which is like love, your first like true love in your life, and then feeling it just get ripped out of me, it really fractured me. And I never really properly processed and compartmentalized that pain, and I generalized that pain, and I generalized it in the fact that anything I give my heart to, I'm eventually going to get hurt. And so, yeah, you know, I was just running from that for so long, and it eventually caught up to me, and it caught up to me in the way of my business was doing great. My life honestly looked amazing on paper, but what I realized is I'd built it from a place of running from something. And I was running from this fear that I wasn't worthy of the sort of a love that I really desired in my heart. I remember I confided in my counselor recently, and I said, I remember on my wedding day, I wondered if this is it. And this is like super vulnerable for me to share. By the way, my wife and I have done a ton of the work. We're super in love. We're super romantic. We're planning our second kid. Like, everything's good. Or at the time, though, I was like, okay, like getting married is this very like stale thing, and then you mix in like the red pill messaging that comes with a lot of like the men's space and stuff, and yeah, I was in a very unhealthy place because I'd both decided that like, yeah, I'd come to some very lonely conclusions about how the world works and who I am and everything. So in the past 6 months or so, maybe 6 months to a year, I've had a lot more peace. I've been making great money. I mean, the business is doing very, very well. A low month is 50 grand profit. A good month's like 100 to 150 grand. So I'm doing great. But even if I wasn't, to be honest, I don't really care. Because right now, I know that way more important than how the business is doing is the work that I'm doing on my heart and the work that I'm doing on my life in general, because that'll make whatever business I build next, time around much more sustainable. And so I share this with you guys to tell you just a short story of like, where are you building from? And a lot of people, they're not willing to slow down and really consider that, because honestly, most people are just building from a place of just trauma. And there's something very alluring about financial success to cope with your problems. But it's not it. I mean, this is coming from a guy. I've made millions of dollars, and I've done extraordinarily well for myself at a very young age. And I've had all the accolades, and I've had all the recognition, and I've been in the rooms and public spoke and all this stuff. And it's like, I was just trying to repair a broken heart. That's what I was trying to do. And our world is so broken, and on some level we know that this isn't what it's supposed to be. We're hardwired for abundance, and yet we live in a world of scarcity, or at least perceived scarcity. And so everywhere we go, we're just subtly being convinced that the world just is set out to get us. And if we're not careful, then we can begin to believe that narrative, that like nothing is ever truly going to be for us. And I just think it's interesting, right? Like, business is going great, life's great. We're planning our second child. Our first child is a joy. And here I am, and it just feels like I keep getting pulled back into these old memories. And it's because my heart and my body knows, like, I haven't moved on. I've totally moved on from the person, but I haven't healed from the pain of that season. It really stays with me, and even right now I'm currently on a journey of recovering from some of these things, because in this time as well, not only did I get my heart broken, but the house fire caused my dad's business to have some challenges because of his focus getting completely deterred. And he ended up partnering with somebody who's ended up being a total fraud. And so I saw that go down, and I saw two things shatter in my life all at once. First of all, if I give my heart to everything, meaning this girl, it's just gonna get shattered. Okay? And then as a man, if you have a good relationship with your dad like I do, because we're like friends, and I look up to him, and he's like my mentor in a big way. Now obviously I have other mentors, but he helps me in a lot of big ways. To see him go through something like that in the same season that I have my heart just crushed, when your life is all about trying to model the men in your life, like my dad is an important man in my life, it really threw me into this like crazy space, man. And I coped in all kinds of really bad ways. I coped with financial success, and I coped with status, and I coped. I coped and I coped and I coped and I coped. And I'm really grateful that God guided me to cope with business, because I think like of all of the ways that you could cope with pain, I think business is a pretty damn good one, because it's like, now at least I can provide for my family, and we can live with a lot of flexibility, and I can do well, and it's like, but it can come from a better place. I'm really glad it didn't become like alcohol or something, because I actually have like alcoholism in my blood. Like, my family had an issue with that. I'm glad I never touched drugs, and so, yeah, I just wanted to share this with you, because I think it's so important where you're pulling from. What's your why, basically? And I know that that's like such a cliche, but it is so true, that if you aren't clear on it, and you're not clear on why you're actually doing this, then you're just going to sabotage your own growth. And when I got married, and I had this like sense of like true, pure, unconditional love in my life for the first time, because my wife is just amazing, it fractured me, because I was just like, I don't know what to do with this. I don't know what to do with a woman who just totally is both in love with me and infatuated with me, on my team, roots for my success purely and has no hidden motive. You know, and it's like, it forced me to just reconsider everything, because it's like, it was so funny. I was like almost mad at her because she like was so unconditionally loving, and I didn't know what to do with that, because I had built everything off of, if I don't do this, then I'm not good enough. And then that got me back in touch with the Lord, and it got me back in touch with my faith in that, like, the Lord and what he did through Jesus loves me unconditionally. And when you can finally accept that, you can actually start to build businesses by design, because trauma just has this like effect on your decision making that it just makes you make really short-term, silly, stupid decisions. Because when you're not making money, you feel like you're dying. And that's really stupid, because money is just a short-term indicator of success. It's not always a long-term indicator. Like, when somebody pays you money, that doesn't actually mean that you're doing things right. Right? It's so you end up in this short-term decision-making cycle, and it fatigues very quickly. This is where you get people who burn out. Like, people who burn out, they are always building from trauma and something that they haven't worked through in their past. And even as I'm saying this stuff, I can feel blood rushing into my ears, and I can feel my heart pumping a little bit, because these are things that I've experienced in my past that hold very heavy weight. Yeah, I remember that conversation in the car with her, and the things that she said about me, and how I gave this person everything, and I was so deeply hurt. And then at the same time, seeing my dad go through what he went through, which means my family went through what they went through. And at the same time that I was heartbroken, I had written down my goals, and I shared them with my dad, and he was in such a distraught state that he said, "Oh, these are unreasonable." Basically, came into my room and said, "Oh, you got to be realistic. Like, this isn't going to happen." And he was actually probably right. Like, I had a really short-term time horizon, and I was just kind of like this antsy 18-year-old kid trying to make some money. And what he was trying to say was, "Hey, slow down. It's okay. Like, you don't need to rush into these things." But what I translated that as in my very distraught state was, "I don't believe in you," right? And he was so caught up in all the stuff that he was dealing with that I don't blame him at all. Like, you can intellectually not hold things over people like I don't with my, high school girlfriend, and like I don't with my dad. But in your body keeps the score. There's a book that talks about that, and your heart doesn't know the difference. And so I found myself chasing and trying to become something in order to feel a certain way about myself. And I gotta tell you guys, of the coping mechanisms that exist, business is a good one, because at least you set yourself up with long-term skills, but it's still a coping mechanism. And you gotta make sure that you're not building to cope with things that you haven't dealt with. Slow down and deal with those things. Slow down and take the time, because I promise you, if it takes 2 years, 5 years, even 10 years, on the other side of that, you'll be able to build from a much healthier place. Like, when you're in that bad space, you end up inviting people into your circle, whether it's clients or a team or whatever, who don't have your best interest in mind. Because and you can't see past that because you just see growth. And that happened to me. I invited people into my circle who said one thing and did another. And I experienced betrayal. And I experienced a profound disillusionment with what I'd built, because, again, I was building from a place of trying to make up for something that I was told that I wasn't by people that I confided in. Okay? And so, really, you need to move from business being the thing that as it succeeds you feel great about yourself, to having enough self-love and respect to then build from a place of self-love and respect. And for me, my hack is just like knowing that I'll never truly get to like full self-love and respect, because like we live in a totally broken world, and accepting the gift of my salvation and seeing eternity as the goal. Like, business just becomes this, like, genuinely, it's just this fun thing that I get to do, and I get to enjoy the fruits, and I get to enjoy the client work, and I get to do it, and not this thing that I do because I don't feel a certain way about myself. And when you can get there, I can honestly say that no amount of money that I made in that old season was worth it. If I'd have taken that season and slowed down and worked at Starbucks, for God's sake, and just let myself think through who I am a little bit, and not try to figure everything out right then, because I had this desire to feel successful, know I'm good, know I'm great. I want everybody to see it, and I want everybody to acknowledge me, because honestly I hated myself, you know, because the things that people had said about me I'd allowed to be true, and I had those suspicions in my own heart. Like, the things that my ex-girlfriend said hurt because I myself wondered if they were true. It wasn't that she said them. It was that I wondered if I was being crazy too. I wondered if I would never make it. I wondered if I was being unreasonable. I wondered if I was being a dick to her parents and her family by questioning her life choices and stuff. That's just living in Indiana, dude. So I just wanted to share this with you guys. You know, when my mentor asked me that, the guy I committed 50 grand to, he's like, why are your goals so small? I realized, like, it's because I'm not trying to cope with stuff. Like, I know exactly what I want. I'm very clear on the business I'm trying to design here. And I know exactly what I'm after. And I have no concern about a certain amount of money in the bank or a certain amount of revenue in the business. And as a byproduct, I end up having more money in the bank and more revenue in the business, by the way, because I actually happen to be very good at this stuff. And I think God's given me a real gift for it. And I think my story is that the enemy tried to take that gift that God gave me for business and for human psychology and for marketing and sales and leadership and communication and leadership and content and business in general. And he tried to take that and he tried to make it a bad thing in my life. And he tried to make it a coping mechanism for pain, as opposed to something that I pursue out of mission and out of a love for it and out of a desire to build something bigger than myself. So, yeah. Just wanted to share this with you guys, and I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments. See you in the next video.